We covered the 2000s draft picks. Now I think it's time to head to the 2010s and see what those number one picks had to offer. But we aren't stopping there. We're also going to cover the 2020s, so might as well get started. 2010, the Rams had the first pick, and this team was absolutely trash for the three previous seasons. 2009, they finished 1-15. 2008, 2-14. 2007, 3-13. Somebody needed to save this team for these poor St. Louis fans. Please. What better position to do that than a brand new quarterback? I mean, they didn't really have a choice though, since Mark Bulger was 32 and that 1-15 season they just had would be his last in the league. Sam Bradford was the best available quarterback at the time, and that's who the Rams decided to go with. Bradford looked great in college, but his time at Oklahoma still left a lot of question marks for scouts. It wasn't due to anything he was doing wrong necessarily, but his offensive line was so good in college that Bradford was rarely ever pressured, so nobody knew if he was good at throwing on the run or would struggle making decisions quickly if his offensive line collapsed in the NFL. Still, there was a ton of upside to be had there, and his accuracy was elite at the time. In his first year, you could definitely see the potential that he was showing, throwing for over 3,500 yards and 18 touchdowns. There was a little issue throwing 15 interceptions, but overall a great season, winning Offensive Rookie of the Year and turning the Rams team around, leading them to a bit more respectable 7-9 record in comparison to previous seasons. If we're being totally honest here, I do think the Rams kind of ruined Bradford during his time there, especially after year number one. They didn't have good protection for him at all. Their receivers were terrible, and the only real good player that was on that offense was Steven Jackson. Combine that with Bradford's ACL tear in week 7 of the 2013 season, it was a recipe for him to leave St. Louis for good. In 2015, Bradford ended up on the Eagles, and while he had one of his best seasons yet, the team only finished 7-9, and you know how Philly fans can get, okay? Any more than 6 losses, forget about it. Pack your bags, you're canned from the team. Also, the Eagles went out and drafted Carson Wentz in 2016, so, there was really no place for him on that team after that year. The next year, he found himself in Minnesota, and this turned out to be his best season yet, finishing the year leading the league in completion percentage along with having a 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Unfortunately, once again, his efforts did not lead to a winning season, and after numerous injuries during the 2017 season, his time with the Vikings came to an end. Bradford finished off his career with the Cardinals after starting off the 2018 season 0-3. After retiring from football, he has been very focused on just being a great dad to his 3 children, along with being inducted into the American Indian Athletic Hall of Fame, which celebrates his Cherokee heritage and contributions to sports. Moving on to the 2011 draft class, this year was stacked, I must say. Von Miller, Patrick Peterson, J.J. Watt, A.J. Green, Julio Jones. I could go on and on for a while here, but taken at number 1 was none other than Superman himself, Cam Newton. The Panthers took him after finishing the previous season 2-14, and it's a damn good thing they did because it immediately started paying off for them. Cam finished year 1 making his first Pro Bowl and winning the Offensive Rookie of the Year award after throwing for over 4,000 yards and rushing for a very impressive 14 touchdowns. He was a different kind of runner at the time. In comparisons, in the 2000s, we talked about Mike Vick being taken number 1 overall. Vick was a speedster who would break your ankles and run circles around you standing in at 6 feet tall. Cam, on the other hand, stands in at 6 feet 5 inches and 245 pounds. This is a guy that will just straight up run you over if he really wants to. Not to mention how he would constantly jump over the goal line, which was almost impossible to stop. Now, 2013 was the first time that Cam led the Panthers to a positive record at 12-4. This was also his second Pro Bowl appearance. Even though they lost in the divisional round to the 49ers, Carolina definitely had a lot of hope that their star player could eventually take them further on down the line. That's exactly what happened in 2015 when the Panthers finished that season with an incredible 15-1 record. Newton threw for a career-high 35 touchdowns and added 10 more on the ground, leading to him making his 3rd Pro Bowl appearance, winning the MVP award, being named the Offensive Player of the Year, and making his lone All-Pro appearance. In the divisional round of those playoffs, they made it by the Seahawks even though the offense fell completely flat in the second half, cruised by the Cardinals in the NFC Championship round, and then lost the famous Super Bowl to Peyton Manning right before he retired. Cam later came out in interviews and podcasts saying that he really just wanted the season to be over at that point, and you could clearly tell. He caused the Panthers 3 turnovers in that game, the most costly one coming on a fumble which most of America thinks he could have jumped on. Instead, he decided to just look at it, and the Broncos ended up recovering it and eventually winning that game. Now, that season was the peak of Cam Newton's career right there. After that, the Panthers could never replicate that same level of success or even really come close to it again. They did make the playoffs once more in 2017, but lost in the first round to the Saints after trailing virtually the entire game. After hurting his foot and missing nearly all of the 2019 season, Newton became a free agent and signed with the Patriots since they needed a replacement in the absence of Tom Brady. He played pretty well, rushing for 12 touchdowns, and it looked like he might just stick around for a while in New England, but Belichick and the Patriots decided to draft Mac Jones instead, and once the season was about to begin, they went with him. Cam then returned to the Panthers for one more season, finishing with a starting record of 0-5, and that was the last time that he's played in the NFL. Since then, Cam has been very busy off the field, appearing on numerous different podcasts, working on creating his own clothing line, working on his own book, and much more. Let's move to 2012 now, one of the most shocking careers that the NFL has seen in quite some time. The Colts were on the clock at number 1 and desperately were in need of a quarterback after Peyton Manning signed with the Broncos. They decided to go with Andrew Luck out of Stanford, who immediately turned this team around in just his first season. He led them to an 11-5 record, led the league in game-winning drives with 7, made his first Pro Bowl appearance, and finished the year just behind RG3 for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Luck was looking like a savior, especially if you compare that to the previous year where they finished 2-14. They lost in the first round of those 2012 playoffs, but the Colts had their new franchise quarterback, it seemed like. For the next 2 years, Luck turned it up even more, leading the Colts to 2 playoff appearances, making 2 more Pro Bowls, and even leading the league in touchdowns thrown at 40 in the 2014 season. His main problem in the playoffs was a, half-decent quarterback by the name of Tom Brady. Luck and the Colts just couldn't beat him and the Patriots. 2013 divisional round, they lost 43-22, and the 2014 playoffs, they were blown out in the AFC Championship game 45-7. 2015 was the year where everything began to fall apart for Luck, even if fans didn't really know it at the time. The first injury of that season came in September when he tore his right labrum in his shoulder. And then in the beginning of November, he suffered a lacerated kidney, which caused him to miss a total of 9 games. Following that year, he was right back to being the Andrew Luck that Indianapolis fans loved, throwing for over 4,200 yards and 31 touchdowns. But in 2017, he missed the entire season due to finally getting surgery on that torn labrum from 2 years back. Luck once again came back to deliver a good season for the Colts, leading them to the divisional round before this time losing to the Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs 31-13. Right after a preseason game before the 2019 season began, that's when Luck shocked the entire world. He announced his retirement from football entirely, stating that he'd been in constant pain for 4 straight years. It had taken away his joy for the game, and he was just done going through that cycle. A lot of mental and physical pain at the end of the day. Luck was adored by Indy fans, one of the nicest players in the league, and the Colts have deeply missed his presence on the team since. After stepping back from football, Luck has been coaching high school football, spending time with his wife and 2 children, and living a much more peaceful life away from the NFL. Now for 2013, this was our first non-quarterback on this list. Offensive lineman Eric Fisher was taken number 1 by the Kansas City Chiefs. After a miserable 2-14 season the year prior, they fired head coach Romeo Crennel, brought in Andy Reid, and swapped in Alex Smith for quarterback instead of Matt Castle or Brady Quinn. They each started a certain amount of games, swapping back and forth. Not to mention, they had one of the best running backs in the entire league with Jamal Charles. The Chiefs needed Fisher not only to provide more time for Smith, but also open holes for Charles. Now, Kansas City actually finished with a positive record every single season that Fisher was on the team. 2018 was the first season that he made the Pro Bowl, which also happened to be Patrick Mahomes' first year as the full-time starting quarterback, and the next year is when the Chiefs would go on to make the Super Bowl against the 49ers. Fisher played a big part in getting them that far in the season. The 49ers were in complete control of that Super Bowl heading into the fourth quarter, but Mahomes willed that team back to win the game 31-20. Following that Super Bowl season, Fisher made one more Pro Bowl appearance in 2020, but unfortunately would tear his Achilles in the AFC Championship game against the Bills that year. He then signed with the Colts in 2021, but wasn't quite as effective after that injury, causing him to enter free agency at the end of the season. He did end up signing with the Dolphins, but didn't play a single snap for them, so there's a good chance that Fisher's NFL career could be over. On to 2014, the Houston Texans had pick number 1, and they were looking to beef up their defense. They took Javon Clowney out of South Carolina, who was widely known at the time for his electric hit against Michigan in the 2013 Outback Bowl. He was much more than just that hit, though. He was the best player in the entire country. Clowney struggled to stay healthy during his first 2 seasons in the league, dealing with a few different injuries, including a meniscus tear that caused him to miss 12 total games in his rookie season with the Texans. Once 2016 rolled around, though, we really started seeing the dominance that Clowney was capable of. He made the Pro Bowl 3 straight seasons, along with helping the Texans make the playoffs twice. After the 2018 season was over, Clowney began bouncing around the league from the Seahawks to the Titans and then to the Browns, but over that time he was never truly healthy and didn't play in all 16 games any season. Most recently, he was a part of the Ravens team, who just made it to the AFC Championship game before losing to the Chiefs. Clowney played a huge role in them getting that far, though, and that defense being so deadly, as he finished the season tied for a career high in sacks at 9.5. He's looking to build on that season next year, and if the Ravens end up re-signing him this offseason, hopefully for their sake, they don't have to play against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs again. Moving to 2015 now, crab leg stealing Jamus Winston was taken first overall by the Bucs following their 2-14 season. Coming out of Florida State, Jamus had a long list of strengths, including being an excellent pocket passer, having great accuracy, impressive football IQ, could scramble well, and many, many more. The main weakness just seemed to be his immaturity off the field. Now, if you've watched the NFL a lot since 2015, you would know that Jamus can certainly be a character when it comes to his attitude, but you do know what to expect from him when he does play. He started off his NFL career well, making the Pro Bowl in his rookie year and following that up by leading the Bucs to their first positive season since 2010. Just when things seemed to be going well, they turned around and started going in the opposite direction. During the 2017 and 18 seasons, Winston dealt with multiple injuries, and when he was on the field, the team was just not winning games, finishing those seasons with a combined record of 6-16. Once 2019 rolled around, Jamus threw for a mind-boggling 5,109 yards along with 33 touchdowns. Now, you would think, holy shit, this guy's insane, right? MVP type season right here. Except for the fact that he threw 30 interceptions and the Bucs only finished 7-9 because of all those turnovers. It became pretty clear that after that season, Winston wasn't going to last long in Tampa Bay, so he became part of the division rival New Orleans Saints starting in 2020. Since then, he's mainly served as a backup quarterback behind names like Drew Brees, Andy Dalton, and most recently, Derek Carr. Honestly, for all my fantasy football guys out there, put this man in instead of Derek Carr. We do not need 48 checkdowns to Alvin Kamara every single game, all right? Let Chris Olave thrive, and if Jamus is going to throw 40 interceptions, so be it. All jokes aside, if he stays with the Saints, Winston is probably going to continue to back up Derek Carr unless something drastically changes during the current offseason. Although it has been stated that Winston is not satisfied with being the backup, so best of luck to him in his journey to reclaiming that starting role. 2016, yet another quarterback went first. Jared Goff was taken by the Rams, the first season that they switched from St. Louis to Los Angeles, and that season was a complete disaster for him. His starting record was 0-7, throwing more interceptions than touchdowns and leaving the organization with more questions than answers. Goff gave them those answers, though, starting in year 2, leading them to an 11-5 record and making his first Pro Bowl appearance after having a 4-1 touchdown to interception ratio. The Rams would end up losing in the wildcard game that season, but would be right back in the playoffs in 2018 looking for more. On the back of another Jared Goff Pro Bowl season, the Rams made it all the way to the Super Bowl against the Tom Brady-led Patriots. This game was a straight-up defensive battle. 16 total points scored, 0 touchdowns thrown by either quarterback, This was a casual fan's worst nightmare, and the Super Bowl is the most casually watched NFL game all season long, so you can probably imagine people hated this game. Brady, of course, won yet another title, and all the Rams had to show for their amazing run was 3 points in the biggest game of the entire year. Now, Goff kept playing well for the next 2 seasons, but the Rams wanted to win, and they wanted it now, so they didn't feel like Goff was the right guy to do that with. They sent him to Detroit and replaced him with Matthew Stafford, and as we know now, that would be the right choice for them, as Los Angeles then won the Super Bowl that same year. But Goff's time in Detroit started the exact opposite. Very bad. 3-10-1 was his starting record that first year, but since then, that organization has had hope like never before. Players are stepping up huge like Amon-Ra St. Brown. The duo of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs have brought new life to that backfield, and the Lions are hoping to cash in on a Super Bowl run within the next couple of years. They came super close this past season and should have honestly made it to face the Chiefs. They kind of choked that game against the 49ers, and I personally wouldn't be surprised at all if we saw the Lions win it very soon. The Lions are also a team that I feel like you can't hate. They've been bad for so long now, you got to cut these guys some slack here. Let's see Jared Goff and the Lions win a championship. Let's head to 2017, where a defensive end by the name of Myles Garrett would be selected by the Cleveland Browns. They needed a ton of help on both sides of the ball, and they were coming off a season where they gave up the 3rd most amount of points in the league. So far into his career, Garrett has been a phenomenal pick. His rookie season started late due to an ankle injury, but since then, he has been a complete monster, making 5 Pro Bowl appearances already, 3 first-team All-Pro appearances, and is coming off his best season yet in 2023. Since 2018, Garrett had 10 or more sacks every season, and the only reason he didn't have a 6th Pro Bowl appearance is because he was suspended in 2019 for 6 games for bashing Mason Rudolph with his helmet. Like we just mentioned, he had 10 sacks, still missing 6 games that year, which is unreal. The past season, he just won his first Defensive Player of the Year award, and the Browns made an unbelievable playoff run before losing to the Texans in the wildcard game. They're hoping to definitely pick up right where they left off next season, with Garrett once again leading that defense. As for 2018, those same Browns were on the clock looking for a quarterback after 3 straight disastrous seasons. They took my brother Baker Mayfield. People say I look like him all the time, except there's one difference. He's out here leading an NFL team to the playoffs while I'm over here making videos. So if you want to send me some money, Baker, to your family, it would be much appreciated. But during his college days at Oklahoma, there were mixed opinions about him. Some scouts thought he was a fierce leader who had the toughness needed to make it in the league, while others thought he was too cocky and needed to get his act in check. That toughness is exactly what the Browns needed, though. A player who would put everything on the line to win games. And that's exactly what Baker did. The Browns fought and clawed their way back to close to an even record for the first 2 years. But in the 3rd season, they finally broke through. They finished with a record of 11-5 and made their first playoff appearance since 2002. Cleveland even won their first playoff game, beating the Steelers before eventually falling to Mahomes and the Chiefs. After that year, Baker couldn't find that same level of success, and in 2022, he was sent to the Carolina Panthers, where he started off the year 1-5 as a starter. Near the trade deadline, Mayfield ended up on the Rams, where he had a miraculous game against the Raiders on Thursday Night Football. But sadly, that high wouldn't last too long. Now, this most recent season, he was a part of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and really turned his career around with this team. He threw for his first 4,000-yard season of his career, finished 3rd in Comeback Player of the Year voting, and led them to a playoff berth. They absolutely smoked the hell out of the Eagles in the wildcard round, 32-9, before falling to the Lions in the divisional round. Baker is a free agent this offseason, but I feel like the Bucs would be stupid not to try to throw their best offer at him and try to get him to stay. 2019, we have yet another quarterback, Kyler Murray, taken by the Cardinals. Arizona was coming off a 3-13 season. They were not happy at all with Josh Rosen, so they decided to look for answers elsewhere, and that answer happened to be Kyler Murray. Now, Murray's first season in the NFL turned out great. He won the Offensive Rookie of the Year award and threw for 20 touchdowns. But there were still a ton of problems. Most importantly was that the Cardinals only finished with 5 wins, and he was sacked the most out of any quarterback in the entire league. Now, in 2020, the Cardinals decided to give him a weapon by the name of DeAndre Hopkins, who was one of the best wide receivers in football at the time. This went well for both of them, leading to Kyler making the Pro Bowl 2 straight seasons and Arizona making the playoffs in the 2021 season. They lost to the Rams in the wildcard round, but things seem to be heading in the right direction for them otherwise. 2022 became Murray's worst season though, leading to him finishing with a record of 3-8 before tearing his ACL in a game against the Patriots, ultimately ending his season after just 11 games. When he was healthy, the blame couldn't even all be placed on him though in my eyes. This roster had very limited talent. Hopkins was suspended for the beginning of the year, so the main wide receiver was Marquise Brown, and as much as I love Hollywood Brown, he's just not a clear number one leading receiver in the NFL. This past season, Murray came back in the middle of the season, but a lot of people fear that he is not the same player as he was before his ACL tear. The Cardinals are continuing to stand by Murray, but I want to know what you guys think. Should the Cardinals move on from him or ride it out and see what happens? Moving on to 2020, we have every lady's favorite quarterback, Joe Burrow, taken by the Bengals. Scouts saw him as an immediate game changer at the pro level coming out of LSU. He also had two of the best receivers currently in the NFL on that year's college team with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Luckily, Chase was also drafted by the Bengals, so Burrow had someone he could rely on, which was a huge help. The first season of Burrow's career started very slow though for Cincinnati, and it got even worse once he tore his ACL, MCL, and meniscus in late November. Burrow made a huge comeback though, proving that he had the toughness to survive at the professional level and win. In 2021, he won the Comeback Player of the Year award, along with leading the Bengals to a 10-6 record. If that wasn't enough for you, Burrow also took down Mahomes and the Chiefs in the playoffs to make it all the way to the Super Bowl against the Rams. This was a hard-fought game on both sides, ending with the Rams narrowly winning by a final score of 23-20. In 2022, Burrow once again led the Bengals to the playoffs and a 12-4 record, along with securing his first Pro Bowl appearance. This time around, Mahomes and the Chiefs got the better of them, knocking Cincy out in the AFC Championship game. And as for this past season, it was a brutal one for Burrow as he was injured since the preseason. So we really didn't get a good look at their offense in full swing. They did just re-sign T. Higgins though, and Chase is still there, so the Bengals should be back to becoming contenders in the 2024 season, barring any changes. On to 2021, not surprising here, another quarterback taken with Trevor Lawrence to the Jaguars. T-Law was an animal in college, finishing his career at Clemson with a record of 38-2 and a national championship to show for it. If I'm being completely honest, just throw his rookie season with the Jaguars in the garbage because Urban Meyer is one of the worst NFL coaches that I've ever seen. Once he was finally canned, the Jags started doing something in 2022 after they got Doug Peterson from Philly, but before that, it was a complete shit show. Lawrence finished that 2022 season with a Pro Bowl appearance, 25 touchdown passes, just 8 interceptions, and led the Jags to a playoff berth. They snuck by the Chargers in the first round after an unreal comeback, but couldn't quite get past Mahomes and the Chiefs in the divisional round. Personally, I was very disappointed in their most recent season. They went out and got a huge weapon in Calvin Ridley, still had Christian Kirk who went crazy the year prior, but still couldn't make a postseason run. Lawrence played fine, but that's really all it was. I'm really hoping for some fireworks from them in the 2024 season, or else there's going to be a lot of questions. Staying with the Jags here, they also had the first overall pick in 2022, and this time they decided to go with a defensive end by the name of Travon Walker. Travon Walker has really not been discussed at all these past 2 seasons. From my understanding, overall, he's been alright, but not spectacular. He's really good at stopping the run and did just finish this past season with 10 sacks, which is great to see. So he is trending in the right direction, but compared to the picks after him, he kind of gets lost in the noise. And in 2023, none other than Bryce Young was taken by the Carolina Panthers. Complete disaster of a rookie season for him. 2-14 as a starter and was sacked for the most amount of yards out of any quarterback in the league. But what is this dude really supposed to do over here? Your best receiver is a 33-year-old Adam Thielen. You signed Miles Sanders to a huge contract, which personally I don't believe he deserved. The offensive line in Philadelphia made him look so much better than he actually is as a runner. And the offensive line in general just breaks down right when the ball is snapped. They might need to just gut this team and start from scratch, honestly. At this point, hopefully they can get back on the right track in these next couple of seasons, because if not, Panthers fans might start a riot. And as for 2024, we don't know yet who's going to be the first overall pick. The Bears have a choice to make. Maybe it's going to be Caleb Williams, maybe Marvin Harrison Jr., or somebody that nobody expects. We're going to have to just wait and see. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out some of my others. Also, hit that subscribe button.